Given a string and a certain number of rows, we have to perform a zigzag conversion and return the result. So what exactly is this zigzag conversion? Well, let's say the string is hello world and the number of rows is 3. We can arrange the letters in a certain zigzag pattern. So the first letter, H, would go into the first row. The second letter would go into the second row, and so on. Then, once we've hit the bottom, we'd go back up. So the next letter goes in the second row, then the first row, and we'd continue doing this until all the letters are used up. So you can see that this is the zigzag pattern. Then, we'd have to return the string that would be formed if we read it row by row. So first, we'd read the first row, which is HOL, then the second row, which is ELWRD, then the last row, LO. So reading in that order, the string that we would have to return is HOL, ELWRD, LO. Here's another example with 4 rows. So this time, we'd assign the letters down to the 4th row, then go back up, and continue the same zigzag pattern. This time, reading the string row by row gives us HOEWR, LOL, LD. Now, to solve this, let's look at the connection between the zigzag pattern and the original string. If we traverse the string one character at a time and see which row it's in, we can see that H belongs to row 1, E belongs to row 2, L is in row 3, and the second L is in row 4. O then goes back up to row 3, W is in row 2, and O is in row 1. Then we go back down again to rows 2, 3, and finally 4. So what you can see is that the order in which we assign the rows to characters is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, we are oscillating or going back and forth between the top and bottom rows. This also works for the case with 3 rows. The order of the row numbers is 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2. We see the same oscillating pattern. So here's how we'll solve this. We'll traverse the string and keep track of which row each character is in. Then, we'll concatenate all the characters in row 1, concatenate that with all the characters in row 2, and finally concatenate that with all the characters in row 3, and return the result. Now let's look at the code and see how we can do this in Python. Let's say the string s is hello world and numRows equals 3. First, we can check for some base conditions. If there's only one row, then the string stays the same, so we can just return s. And if the number of rows is greater than or equal to the number of characters, then the string would just become one vertical line, and when you read it row by row, it would still be the same string, so we can also just return s. Now, the first thing we'll do is initialize a 2D array called rows, and we'll initialize an empty list for each row. If you're not familiar with this notation, this is called list comprehension in Python, and what it's basically saying is, for row in range numRows, so range 3, create an empty list, and we'll nest all of that inside of an outer list. I've also indicated the index of each inner list here. Notice that here, the first row starts at index 0, not 1. Then we'll create a variable called index, which will indicate which row we're currently on, and we'll initialize that to 0, since we know that the first character will always be assigned to the first row. We then create another variable called step, and this variable is going to tell us whether we need to go up a row or down a row, as we're assigning characters to rows. For now, we'll make it 1, which means that we'll start by moving down a row. You'll see what I mean in a second. Then, we'll enter a loop and use a variable called char, which will take on the value of each character in the string. So it starts off as the character h. Then we'll start assigning each character to a row. Index equals 0, so this line will append the character h to the first row. Then, we need to add the step variable to the index variable in order to update the index. But first, let's check for 2 things. If the index is 0, then that means we're at the top row, so we need to increment the index. So we'll make the step size 1. If the index is at numRows minus 1, or in this case 2, then that means we've reached the bottom row, so now we need to decrement the index, so step will be -1. So right now, the index is 0, so we'll make the step equal to 1, and add it to the index. So now index equals 1 and points to the second row. Then we'll move on to the next character. Let's append e to the second row and check for both conditions. Index is neither 0 nor 2, so we can safely just add step to index, and now the index is 2. Next up is L, and we'll append that to the last row. Now index does equal 2, so we have to reverse the direction and make the step equal to -1. Now when we add step to index becomes 1 and moves up a row. Next is L again, and we'll append that to the second row. Neither condition is true, So let's move the index back up to the first row. Then we'll append O, and since we've reached the top row, let's change step back to 1 and move down a row. And we basically just keep repeating this pattern. We append the character, move to the next row, and if we see that we've hit either the top or bottom row, then we switch directions and keep on going. So I'm just going to speed up the rest since it's the same thing, but you can see that the index variable oscillates between the top and bottom rows and appends each character to the appropriate list. Okay, now that we're done with the loop, the last thing to do is join the characters together into one string. We can use the built-in join method that converts an array into a string, but we'll have to do this in 2 steps. So first, we'll convert each inner list into a string by joining all of its elements on the empty string. So in other words, we're just smushing it all together into one string. So the first list, which contains H, O, and L, gets converted into the string HOL. Then we'll do that to the second list, then the third list. Now that we finally have a single list that contains the strings from each row, all that's left to do is to call the join method again, this time on the outer list, which is the rows variable. So by joining all 3 strings together, we finally get our final result, which is HOL ELWRDLO. Now you may be wondering, why did we have to use a 2D array for the rows? Couldn't we have just initialized each row to the empty string and used string concatenation to append each character? Well, the problem with that is that since strings are immutable, each string concatenation would run in O of n time. That is, you can't just append a character at the end of a string. String concatenation actually allocates new memory and copies over each character to create an entirely new string. So that means that this line would end up running in O of n time. And since the loop is also O of n, the algorithm would end up running in O of n squared time. But if you use lists instead, since lists are immutable, we can just append each character in constant time. Or more precisely speaking, the amortized complexity of appending to a list is constant. So that means that everything inside the loop runs in constant time. So the algorithm now runs in O of n time.